Welcome back to Pokemon Episode Summaries. Today, I'll be doing episode 460, A Palm in Circumstance. The episode begins with Ash and the gang going on a journey to Fennel Valley, the newest location of the Battle Pyramid, so Ash could have his rematch against Brandon. But they had gotten tired from all the walking, so Ash and the gang decided to have a lunch break. So they stopped in the middle of the forest and instantly got all of their Pokemon sent out and gave each of them Pokemon food. Ash sent out Pikachu, Apom, Donphan, Sceptile, Swallow, and Corphish. May sent out Munchlax, Squirtle, Combuskin, and Eevee, and Brock sent out Marshtomp, Bonsly, and Fortress. Pikachu, Bonsly, Eevee, and Squirtle were eating on a tree stump. Donphan and Combuskin were eating by each other. Fortress was eating mostly by itself. And Corphish, Swallow, and Sceptile were eating together, while Munchlax was mostly just eating by itself, as was Donphan. As for Ash and the gang, they were eating a stew pasta-like thing and having some tea. And Ash, being super hungry, finished his meal extremely quickly, when suddenly he noticed that his newly captured Apom had finished eating and was nowhere to be seen. Ash was about to ask his other Pokemon if they knew where Apom had went off to, but he then spotted it in a nearby field of flowers, from which it had made a little chain of flowers, effectively turning it into a crown, and it put it on its head, hoping to get attention from this. It certainly did get attention, as May couldn't stop commenting on how cute Apom was. Even though Ash was already done his lunch, everyone else finished their lunch. And with that done, Ash suggested to Pikachu that the two of them should train, just like Brandon had said they should, and Pikachu excitedly jumped on Ash's shoulder, ready to train. Seeing this, Apom gets jealous as fuck. It wanted to be the one to train with Ash, so it starts having a tantrum as it pulls Ash down to the ground, knocking him over, by trying to go on his second shoulder to match Pikachu. Apom, wanting attention from Ash, then grabbed his hat and ran away, basically forcing Ash to follow and come after Apom. Before Apom gets too far, though, it climbs up into a tree and dangles from a branch, sticking its tongue out at Ash, taunting it before running off again. Brock assumed that Apom's behavioral problems could get way too out of control for just Ash to handle, so Brock followed after Ash to assist him, leaving May and Max behind, instructing them to watch the rest of their Pokemon that were out. So, while Ash was searching for Apom, Brock quickly caught up until the two of them reached a fork in the road and stopped, as, unfortunately, as Brock pointed out, Apom seemed to have gotten away, which made Ash and Brock wonder where the fuck Apom could have disappeared to anyways, because it couldn't have gone far. Just then, Brock and Ash spot a temple or shrine of some sort towering over the forest in the distance, and suggest that maybe Apom was attracted to this place, so they decide to go there in hopes of finding it. As soon as Ash and the gang reached the temple or shrine-like area, they see a large crowd of people gathered around it and wondered what the fuck was going on. Especially when they saw a whole bunch of people training and shit. They were doing a whole bunch of, like, exercises or something. One guy saw the confused looks on Ash and Brock's faces, and were absolutely flabbergasted to find out that Ash and Brock didn't know what was going on. So the guy explained that a competition was being held by the local village here at this temple to decide who would become the village's king for the next year. The boy then introduced himself as Hank, while Ash and Brock introduced themselves as well. Hank then explains that the king of the village was like a chief who would be assigned with finding a solution to all issues that arise in the village over the next year. Brock wondered what exact training was necessary to become the king, noting that there was a whole bunch of different training exercises going on at once. Just then, a ceremony started that answered Brock's question, as a huge gong sounded from the top of the temple, being rung by a man, who was presumably the elder or current king-like figure right now. The elder had rung the gong to get everyone's attention, as he started to address everyone in the village, holding up a golden crown, announcing that the person that possessed the crown by sundown would become the king. And that was why people were training. There wasn't specific training necessary, but if a person wanted to get the crown, they may have to run for it or potentially fight someone for it, so training would be the way to go. The entire village that was very much paying attention to the crown cheered, including Hank. And he even told Brock that anyone was welcome to participate. You didn't even have to be from the village to participate. And he also said that the king would be adored by many, especially the girls in the village, and being a king would be a great honor for anyone. Hearing all this makes Brock go into a wild fantasy of being surrounded by a large group of adoring girls, causing him to start jumping in excitement at this whole idea. Ash tried to tell Brock that you actually couldn't become king if you didn't live in the village, and try and fuck with him, and this made Brock utterly distraught. However, the elder actually heard Ash saying this and confirmed what Hank had said before, being that anyone could enter to become king. You did not have to be from the village, which annoyed Ash because this just made Brock go into his whole flirting approach yet again, developing hearts in his eyes non-stop. And he formally asked the current elder if he could run for king, and the elder confirmed this. Hank explained that he wanted to be the king as well, but admitted that he didn't think he was good enough to be one. This just motivated Brock even more, confident that he could be a good king. While Ash was annoyed with Brock constantly going into thoughts about loving women and all that shit, and he obviously didn't think that Brock was set out to be king if he just wanted to get the benefit of having women. Meanwhile, we then see Team Rocket, who were spying on Ash and Brock and the whole village by the temple from a nearby cliff. Some bushes. Immediately upon seeing the crown, Jessie starts to fantasize about becoming royalty of the village herself, although Meowth stops her fantasy and goes into a boss fantasy of his own, as he suggests that they get the crown only to give it to Giovanni, since there were a lot of ways that Giovanni could use it. Meowth fantasized about all these different things. For one, Giovanni could just wear it while he was relaxing. Two, he could wear it while he was sleeping to essentially act as a cold pillow of some sort. Three, he could use it as a little case for some of his toiletries. He could also use it as a little food basket in his kitchen, and he could also use it as a curling item, like a curling ball, whatever the fuck it's called. And you can also just use it as like a fidget toy while he was watching TV. Jesse and James liked all these ideas. And after some debating on how they were going to steal the crown, they came up with a plan and ran off, determined to steal the crown for Giovanni. Because they wanted to impress Giovanni and get a promotion, as usual. And Team Rocket cheered for this, including Mime Jr., who determinedly ran off with Team Rocket as well to get the crown. Anyways, back at the temple, outside of it, the crown had been placed on a stand at the very top of the interior of the temple. So, when the elder struck a gong again, this was permission for all the villagers to rush up the temple steps towards the crown to get it so they could each become king. The current Elder King guy was very tired after running the crown to the top of the interior of the temple, and he was so tired that he realized that he closed the gates to the temple when he came out, and he didn't reopen them. So he had one of his helpers in the village ring the gong for him, and he actually opened up the gates this time, so people went into the temple searching for the crown for real this time. Both Brock and Hank were among the people going to find the crown, but both Hank and Brock were caught off guard when they were flattened by the rushing mob crowd and moaned in annoyance that they missed their chance to achieve their dreams of becoming king, because people would definitely reach the crown before them. Brock and Hank simply remained at the bottom of the temple with Ash as they watched everyone else run up to the top. Sad that they were among the people heading to the top. Hank could barely even think straight from being trampled, but he knew for a fact that he was disappointed due to not making it up to the top of the temple, although Brock, while disappointed, was also still stuck in his little dazed personality where he was basically daydreaming about being surrounded by women. Anyways, as for all of the villagers that did actually make it up the temple, as they were climbing up, and right as they approached the crown, Team Rocket appeared from the side of the temple, with Meowth using a mechanical extendable hand to grab the crown. However, before Team Rocket could actually grab it, none other than the Ash's Apom, currently with his hat, jumped in the way and got the crown first. Apom then puts the crown on its head, dropping Ash's hat in the process, and Team Rocket accidentally pick it up when they try and get the crown from Apom, leading Jessie to throw Ash's hat in frustration, because she didn't want that. She wanted the fucking crown, and luckily, Ash's hat ended up getting thrown right back down to him, and he put it securely on his head. All the villagers and Team Rocket then noticed Apom getting away, climbing on a little beam at the top of the temple, out of reach, away from everybody, leaving everyone to panic, since they didn't know what would happen if Apom held the crown at sundown, although the elder just stated what he thought would have been obvious, which was that if Apom had possession of the crown by sundown, then Apom would be the king of the village, because anything could become the king so long as it had the crown at sundown. Apom continued to climb even more farther away, and naturally, none of the villagers wanted to have a Pokemon, especially a Pokemon as rambunctious as Apom, as their leader, for an entire year. So all the townspeople / villagers, as well as Jessie from Team Rocket, tried to get the crown back from Apom, demanding that Apom come down to them. But even as all of the villagers tried to shake the part of the temple that Apom was on to shake it off, this just spooked Apom, causing it to run down the steps to the bottom of the temple before Team Rocket or any of the villagers could do jack shit. Of course, when Apom comes down, it passes by Ash, Brock, and Hank, who were aware of the Apom situation. So, Hank, Ash, and even Brock, who was able to snap out of his little trance there, tried their best to convince Apom to give the crown back to the temple so that, a human could go after it. But Apom merely stuck its tongue and eyelid out at Brock, not showing any reason to give the crown at all. And even when Ash continued to insist that Apom do give the crown over, Apom just got immensely sad and angry seeing Pikachu on Ash's shoulder, and basically it got jealous, so it ran away with the crown, all the way into the forest. So Brock, Ash, Hank, and all of the villagers who had come down from the temple go running after Apom, although Apom goes a little too fast for them, so Ash sends Pikachu ahead to catch up with Apom. But even then, Pikachu couldn't get to Apom fast enough, and it lost sight of it, so now it had to look for it again. The villagers, along with Ash, Brock, and Hank, were looking for Apom, but they couldn't find Apom since they were too busy stressing about how they didn't want a Pokemon for a king, and also Apom wasn't really hiding in plain sight because he was hiding in some bushes. While he was in these bushes, Apom tried to adjust the crown and make it properly fit on its head, but its head was too small, so the crown kept falling off. Apom tried his best to happily pose wearing the crown, but since the crown didn't fit, it just didn't look right, and the crown kept falling off too. Apom was just getting angry and frustrated as fuck, so it forcibly tried to force the crown on its head, but when it did this, it caused the crown to go a little too far on its head, and it started to cover Apom's eyes to the point where Apom couldn't see. So Apom now starts struggling to get the crown off of itself, not on itself. And while it was doing this, Pikachu actually managed to find Apom and saw it struggling, so it tried to help out Apom and take the crown off. Pikachu does manage to help somewhat, pulling the crown above Apom's eyes so it could see again, but the crown was still stuck on Apom's head. Pikachu applied so much force that it ended up getting bounced back away from Apom, and before Pikachu could try anything else to get the crown off of Apom, the villagers had heard the ruckus going on between the two Pokemon, and immediately started to chase after them, obviously wanting Apom and the crown, so Apom flees, while Pikachu also gives chase with the villagers. but Apom was going pretty fucking fast. The villagers and Pikachu were very angry with Apom for running away though, so they were able to keep up a relatively good pace. As for Ash, Brock, and Hank, they had lost track of the other villagers and Pikachu, not knowing where they were. All they knew was that they were stuck in some bushes. Right as Ash, Brock, and Hank were ranting to themselves about how they were lost and were trying to come up with a way to not get lost, they heard the shout of some villagers in the distance saying that Apom was heading towards a north cliff, towards the north, obviously. Brock proceeded to lead himself, Ash, and Hank to the north so they could get Apom. However, Ash stopped Brock, pointing out that the way that he was taking them was not north. He thought north was another direction. Now, Brock was right, but Ash was adamant that he knew where north was, and Brock didn't, so this resulted in a pretty big argument. Hank stopped the argument, though, as he pointed out that he had a solution and sent out his nose pass, which had the ability to point in the right direction where they needed to go, as he told it to point north, and it did. Ash was amazed by this nose pass's skills, because he didn't recall Roxanne's being able to do that, so he scanned the nose pass with his Pokedex and found out that nose pass being able to tell directions was a common feature of them. After a bit of pinpointing, Hank's nose pass was able to find the correct way north, and nose pass proceeded to lead Ash, Brock, and Hank in the direction they needed to go. However, along the way to their destination, they ran into May and Max, as they explained that they had decided to go looking for Ash and Brock since they had been away for so long. And in turn, Brock explained the whole situation about how Apom had run off from a village and taking their crown, and Apom would actually become king of the village if Ash and the gang couldn't get the crown off of Apom by sundown. Also, it should be mentioned that May and Max did not abandon their Pokemon guarding duties, as they had all of Ash's remaining Pokemon, all of May's Pokemon, and all of Brock's Pokemon with them. Meanwhile, back with Pikachu and Apom, they eventually came to the end of the North Cliff, because they were being chased relentlessly by some of the villagers that had spotted them, and they were at a point where they had nowhere left to go. Apom especially panicked, because it looked down below it and saw the depth of the forest, and how it would likely die if it fell off the cliff. Pikachu looked back to see the villagers closing in on it and Apom, so Pikachu knew that they had to escape the people fast. Why was Pikachu trying to escape the people, you may ask? Well, Apom probably told him that he didn't want to risk getting caught by the villagers in case they couldn't get the crown off of him, and therefore had to make him the king. And he didn't want to be the king, because then he would be separated from Ash and the gang, since they would presumably continue on their journey. So Pikachu felt bad for Apom, basically. Luckily, Pikachu was able to find a small cave passageway atop a rock, and both it and Apom went inside of it to escape the villagers, who had arrived just after Apom and Pikachu arrived in the cave. The villagers tried their best to fit through it to go after them, but much to their frustration, they couldn't fit through the cave. So, while the villagers were ranting about how Apom and Pikachu got away, Apom and Pikachu got to the other side, out of the cave, and hide, as they saw something approaching inside a bush. However, they quit hiding when they were relieved to see that what they saw rustling in the bushes was Ash and the gang, who were also glad to have found Apom and Pikachu. At first, Pikachu and Apom were considering hiding to get away from whatever was in the other bushes. They were going to escape in some other different bushes, but when they saw that it was just Ash and the gang, Apom and Pikachu hugged Ash happily. Brock, May, Max, and Hank then came up to Ash and congratulated him on reuniting with his Pokemon, although Ash noticed that the sun was setting and Apom had the crown on it still, so it would be the king if they didn't get the crown off of it soon. So Ash declared that the crown had to come off of Apom as soon as possible, and Ash did just that, trying to get the crown off by pulling as hard as he can, and as quickly as he can, but unfortunately the crown was stuck on very tight and wouldn't budge, which made Apom very scared, as he started to hug Ash for comfort, really hoping that it wouldn't have to stay in the village for a whole year and become the king. So Ash comforted Apom while hugging it, saying that even if Apom was forced to become king, he would stay with Apom for the entire year. While Ash was calming Apom, he was also lulling himself, almost falling asleep, but Max woke him up and reminded Ash that he couldn't wait another year with Apom in this village because the battle pyramid would be missed then for an entire year. But Ash said that he didn't care. Even though it would be a disappointment to have to miss his rematch with Brandon, he wouldn't consider leaving a member of his team behind, since his Pokemon were more important than actual battling to him. Apom was really overjoyed to hear this, as it stared at Ash, now knowing that Ash cared for it just as much as Pikachu. He cared for all his Pokemon equally, it seemed like, which was evident when Ash would stay behind for a whole year with Apom. Ash then stood up, because he got startled when he heard something. It sounded like a Fearow, or robotic Fearow. Sure enough, a robotic Fearow grabbed the crown and Apom along with it, and flew off with Apom and the crown. While Apom was being pulled up by the Fearow, though, Ash managed to grab a hold of it, and Pikachu used a Thunderbolt to electrocute the robotic Fearow and Ash and Apom in the process, but it wasn't enough to make the Fearow mech drop Apom. So Ash is let go in the process too. Just then, though, Team Rocket shows up on the edge of a cliff and reveals that the Fearow mech was theirs, as they do their motto, with Mime Jr. and Wobbuffet joining in on the motto. Once the motto was done, Team Rocket announced that they actually designed more Fearow to get the crown, and Meowth pressed a button on his remote control, which sent multiple other Fearow mechs flying to get the crown from Apom. The Fearow mechs did take a bit to launch, much to Meowth's frustration, but they launched eventually. Anyways, as the Fearow started to attack Apom, Ash shielded Apom from the attacks, and that meant Pikachu did as well. But this also meant that Ash and Pikachu were getting pecked like no tomorrow, and it really hurt. So Ash tried to have Pikachu use a Thunderbolt to take out the Fearow mechs, but Team Rocket heard this and used the remote control to make the Fearow fly high up so that the Thunderbolt could not reach them. So Ash came up with a different idea once the Fearows died down to attack again, and sent out Swellow to stop them. Although Team Rocket taunted that there was nothing, not even anything that Swellow could do to stop the Fearow mechs. Regardless, Swellow started to furiously attack the Fearow mechs, but even as Swellow succeeded in knocking a few of them down, the rest of them attacked Swellow, and this allowed the other ones to get back up, and the process repeated until Swellow was completely surrounded, and Swellow was now getting essentially beat to shit, and Ash got frustrated as Team Rocket taunted him, and he realized that he couldn't win because Swellow was too outnumbered, so he recalled Swellow. However, Ash and the gang, Pikachu and Hank and Apom watch in shock, along with Team Rocket, as Swellow refuses to be recalled and attacks all the Fearow one by one, knocking several of them down. But Swellow then got hit really bad and started to fall to the ground, stressing out Ash and the gang, Hank, Apom, and Pikachu. But Swellow regained its balance and attacked again, but it got hurt once more, so Ash literally called Swellow back this time, when Hank came up with an idea, suggesting that Ash should have Apom use Double Team to confuse Team Rocket, and therefore give Ash and the gang some time to come up with a more detailed plan. Ash decided that this was a good idea, and had Apom use Double Team. And Apom, on cue, produces dozens of illusory copies. Although Ash was admittedly embarrassed, because he didn't even know that his Apom could use Double Team at all. And he kind of felt stupid for not knowing something about his own Pokemon. However, the Double Team doesn't do much to begin with, though, as the Fearow robots quickly destroy all the illusions and reveal the real Apom, and one Fearow grabs Apom, since the real Apom was now defenseless. While Jesse and James, admittedly shocked, congratulated Meowth on his epic piloting skills of the Fearow mechs. The Fearow mech started to take Apom away, so Ash and Pikachu grabbed onto the Fearow mech, trying to stop it from getting away, and they specifically grabbed on to Apom and try and pull it off of the Fearow mech. Apom was utterly terrified, so Ash tried his best to comfort it as he struggled to free it, but he just couldn't, which made May and Max worried too. However, Hank, seeing everyone in distress, told them not to worry, as he had a different idea, as he sent out his nose pass and told it to use Thunderwave, which essentially interfered with the radio signal that Meowth was using with his remote control to control all the Fearow mechs, thus rendering the Fearow mechs useless and unable to do anything, since Meowth couldn't control them. So the whole flock of Fearow robots started to fly erratically before all of them crashed to the ground, making Team Rocket panic as they saw the disaster unfolding in front of them. Jesse and James yelled at Meowth, telling him to get his shit together, but he just couldn't control the Fearow mech before Pikachu used Thunderbolt and Apom used Swift to send the destroyed bodies of the Fearow and Team Rocket blasting off, much to James's frustration as he yelled at Meowth for failing, although Meowth rebutted that Team Rocket were all equally at fault because Jesse and James could have learned how to work the controller, which made Jesse and James annoyed. Anyways, back with Ash and the gang. They noticed that sunset was literally imminent at this point, and it seemed as though Apom would actually become king, as the entire crowd of villagers that had been chasing after Apom found it, and of course they would want to get the crown, but they just couldn't get it off, so Apom would have to be the king. May panicked, asking Max what could be done, but Max didn't know. Just then, the current king showed up, being carried on a little platform by several other villagers, and Ash got an idea, seeing how scared Apom was to become king, because he didn't want to have that responsibility. So Ash managed to convince everyone in the village to try their best to remove the crown, but even after everyone tried, it still wouldn't budge. So Ash gave up and decided that he was just going to be spending the next year in the village with Apom. But suddenly, Hank got an idea, saying that pulling as hard as they could may not work, but Hank had a last-minute remedy, pulling out a blueberry that he had in his bag, and he told Apom to eat it. So Apom did, and this caused Apom to jump around with its lips puckered, since the berry was so sour, and in turn, since the berry was so uncomfortably sour, this caused the contractions on Apom's head. And since Apom was pushing with the contractions so hard, the crown came loose, and Hank was able to pull it off. Apom was very uncomfortable because of the sour taste, but the sour taste soon faded, and Apom's face went back to a normal expression, not a super sour, uncomfortable expression. And as Hank held the crown up above his head happily, Ash remarked that he was relieved that he and Apom wouldn't have to spend the next year in the village, and Apom was as well, as the two hugged happily, and Ash kindly asked Apom try not to get up to as much trouble in the future, and Apom blushes a little bit, feeling guilty, but it agrees to try and not do as much crazy things. Anyways, it seemed that Hank was so caught up with saving Apom that he didn't even realize that he was currently holding the crown at sunset, so the current king and all the other villagers had to point this out to Hank, officially declaring him as the king. All the villagers and the now former king bowed down to Hank, and it was confirmed that Hank was the king, as someone at the temple rang the gong, confirming that the competition was over and the person currently holding the crown was king. Hank was very excited to be the king, as all the villagers and the former king congratulated him, but he was a little unsure if he should actually become the king and if he was capable of being one. But May and Brock mentioned that Hank having intelligent, creative ideas that got him out of trouble was just what a king needed to be able to do. And Ash and the other villagers and the former king said this as well, saying that Hank's great ideas would be a valuable asset to the village. Pikachu voices his own way of support too, and Hank was convinced, bowing down to the former king as he let the former king place the crown on him. And with that, Hank was now the king, and was looking forward to the life ahead of him and all the improvements he could make to the village. Being the king, as the villagers cheered, also excited. The episode then ends with Ash stating his desire to get to the battle pyramid and have his rematch with Brandon. And suggests to Pikachu that once they leave this village, they resume training, and Pikachu agrees. So with that, Ash and the gang continue on their journey to Fennel Valley to get to the battle pyramid. But not before looking out to the beautiful sunset.